all sorts of things. So it is helpful. All right, we're back? All right, so this is where the ZESA got us. Okay, so this is what we've been discussing. So what was mainstream back in 1905 were the things that we've mentioned. So a coachman, a carriage driver, cartwright, so people who were actually building the carts. That was big business. The wheels, saddlers, harnesses, vets, road maintenance, big business, because horses are going to be horses on the streets. And so people coming in to maintain after them were part of what was needed. And then because of those two cars in there, I've put there what were emerging professions in the early 1900s. So these things were not mainstream, but they were there on the periphery because you had people building the Model T. And so the people had started having conversations about this thing called the automobile and how we may need a mechanic because this thing is built differently. There were people who were talking about how do we make sure that we're able to put fuel in all of these things. So do we need petrol attendants, and what do those people need to know, and what needs to go into the curriculum? But these things were emerging because it wasn't mainstream, because everyone was still on horses. But you had those two people who were really, really eager, and they had cars. And those people were a signal that change was actually coming. And so the big takeaways from our two images is that change, what was emerging in the early 1900s, had become mainstream by the 1940s. That's just 35 years. That's one lifetime. Okay, if a child was born in 1905 to parents who were riding horses, by the time that child was 35, they were in a car. And the things that were mainstream in 1900, so those things that we were holding on to, those people were holding on to in the 1900s, were non-existent just 35 years later. So I want you to keep this in mind as we go into this talk about, so how are we positioning for the future? So I've got a young person there, and this young person is asking, so what is mainstream now, and will it still exist 10 years from now, 15 years from now, 20 years from now? And they're also asking, what is emerging? And is the thing that is emerging going to be mainstream in 5, 10, 15, 20, or 30 years? And those are the questions. I don't have any answers. Okay. I do not have any answers because right now we are still in the midst of the change and things haven't settled. So in 1905, they were still in the midst of the change. But by 1940, things had settled. There were service stations. There were schools where people can go and become auto mechanics. There were places where people were learning how to assemble vehicles. Things had settled. But there is a season in transition where things are, you're on quicksand. And the thing is to be having conversations and being aware of what's actually happening. And so I'm going to go through some of the things that are emerging at the moment so that you can have them top of mind as we go into the rest of the conversation. So the first thing that everyone knows about is AI and automation. This is the thing that is scaring everyone and making us all wonder, will I still have a job by the time they're done with everything that they're doing? And the answer is, dare I say it? The answer is yes, we will have jobs, but the jobs will look different. But it will require us having a willingness to change. And that's going to be a really, really big part of it. There has to be that willingness on our part to adapt with the system. So you couldn't, in 1940, insist that because I've always had a horse and cart, I'm coming into New York City on a horse and cart. It would not work. And so we have to be willing to decide, okay, there's some things that don't work in this new environment. What do I let go and what do I take forward? The second thing to keep in mind is digital connectivity and the Internet of Things. And we're already seeing a little bit of this in our lives. We get really impatient when things don't connect instantly because we're so used to my bank should connect to my EcoCash wallet, and if it doesn't do it in 30 seconds, there's an issue. And this is just going to become more and more prominent in our lives. The third is advanced robotics. Robots being able to do certain things. There is a gentleman called Hinton, I think it is. He's known as the godfather of AI. So he's the man who worked on what we are currently experiencing as ChatGPT and DeepSeek and all of that. And he was asked in a podcast recently that, okay, if you were to advise your children or anyone what they should do, his very quick answer was become a plumber. And the reason why he was saying that is because things that are artisanal, like wiring your home, changing plumbing, those are areas that robotics and AI really can't go into. So advanced robotics is going to affect lots and lots of fields, everything from healthcare to education to engineering. Then we've got biotechnology and genetic engineering. So that's another big one that's coming up. Lots of things happening. I was listening to another lady recently who was talking about having developed they're trialing a cure for sickle cell. So sickle cell has been one of those diseases that if you've got sickle cell trait, great, you're not going to get malaria. But if you've got sickle cell, the disease, it's a big problem for you because you spend a lot of time in hospital. But they're now saying that they've developed technology that can go and re-engineer your genetics so that you no longer have sickle cell disease. So there's all of these things that are happening. And the context in which they're happening is that as they do that, what happens to all the people who had specialized in treating sickle cell disease? Now that there's a cure, a simple jab, and someone is cured of that, which is a good thing. But I've got colleagues in the medical profession who are wondering that, what am I going to do? But then once I cure you, then my revenue is gone. The fifth thing is renewable energy and decarbonization. So lots of talk around this. I think Africa is really ahead when it comes to renewable energies. Most of us will have something that has solar. So solar charger for our cell phones, solar for our lighting at home. So I think Africa actually has something to teach the world when it comes to implementation of renewable energies on a household scale. 3D printing and digital manufacturing. Anyone in construction? You're in construction? Are you familiar with 3D printed homes? You are. Okay. How will that impact your industry?
Well, there'll be no work for the draftsmen and the designers. You can actually design your own home on your computer, on your laptop, and then print it all out and get it built. And now there are robots that will build the house as well. So the builders also might be out of work.
It sounds like such a dire situation. There's a lot of excitement mixed in with a lot of, hard soul searching that goes with it. 3D printing is amazing because in the space of a week, you can have a home from foundation all the way up to roof level. Something that would take bricklayers, 2-3 months to achieve. That one machine with maybe 2 people who are not builders, they're actually technologists controlling the robot, can actually put up a structure. And then extended reality, so virtual, artificial, and mixed reality. So those are all very interesting spaces that are evolving. For people who are in healthcare, something that I'm really keen on is improving the skill of doctors without having to practice on people. And so things like VR and AR can actually allow things like that. So you can become a specialist, you can develop the skills that you need to be able to perform surgery that robots aren't able to perform, and then take those skills into the theater once you're ready. And then quantum computing. Anyone familiar with that one? No? Okay, so quantum computing, was that a hand? Okay, do you want to tell us a little bit about it?
quantum computing is a new way of computers dealing with and looking into functions and how they function. So they don't function. Basically, if you look up a quantum computer, it doesn't look like the computers that we have right now.
Mm-hmm.
And if they succeed, the potential that is being told is that, for example, they might be able to now figure out functions that a normal computer would take years, if not millions and billions of years. They'll be able to calculate how long certain things take in a very short space of time.
Yeah.
So those in accounting, if a quantum computer actually comes, we might not need your brains anymore.
Yeah. So quantum computing is a very interesting one. They've been trying to crack the code for quantum computing. If you think AI is doing incredible things now, if they crack quantum computing, we're going to have another huge jump in terms of what we're seeing in innovation, in technology, in the capabilities of artificial intelligence. So some of those things that we think AI can't do right now, with quantum computing, it will accelerate that progress. And there's already some breakthroughs that are coming out through that. So that's an emerging space to look at. And then space technology and exploration, so that's the new frontier. Even Zimbabwe is getting into that space. We now have a space agency of our own. And so that's a very exciting, I think people, we've colonized the Earth, now we want to colonize outer space and mine resources from there. But what does all of this mean for us today? So the first thing to really realize that I wanted to point out in sharing those things is that we're living in a time when change, as disruptive as the vehicle in 1905 is happening now. So what the vehicle did was that it shortened distances between things. So it changed logistics. I could grow apples in one place that was 300-400 kilometers away, and I could transport my apples. And so it changes economies. It changed how society functioned. It changed the way people lived, the way I didn't have to live where I was working. I could live somewhere else and then within 5 minutes drive to the next county. It brought things like holidays. There were industries that didn't, holidays were for the super rich, the people who could afford to pay the thousands and to have the hundreds of horses to take them from one part of the country to the other. And so the technologies that I've just described on the previous slide are restructuring our societies for us today. And they're doing it in a way that affects all industries. So there's no industry that's spared. You know, sometimes you'll have an innovation and you're like, oh, okay, that's an innovation, but it's happening in the agricultural sector, and it's not really touching everyone else. But the things that I listed are things that are across industries. And so something that is happening within technology is coming into healthcare, but it's also going into accounting. It's going into the legal frameworks. It's going into education. And technologies like that cause a societal disruption, which needs us to start thinking about, so what does this new life look like? And if life is going to change, so what do I need to do to remain relevant in that life? So the two key lessons that I'd like us to take into the next part of my talk is that change is a constant. I had a lecturer who always used to say that the only constant thing in life is change. The thing that varies is the rate of change. Sometimes change is slow, other times change is fast. We're currently living in a period where change is fast, and we need to be able to adjust to that pace. The second thing is that paying attention to what is emerging helps you prepare. And so when I meet people who be like, no, I'm not paying attention to the technology, it's too scary, I don't want to be looking at what's happening with AI or all of these things that are happening in my industry, it means we get overtaken. And so there are people who will be adapting with the change, but those who are ignoring that change will end up paying the price of it. So what I'd like to do in this last part is just to to go through action plans for 3 different types of personas, just looking at the people that we have in the room and maybe the people that you have in your homes. And the first person we're going to look at is a high school student. So if someone is in high school, what should their career planning be? So the key there that I've put is that high school should be laying a foundation and building future-ready mindsets. To be honest, if you're to ask students, what do you want to be when you grow up? And you get the regular, I want to be a software engineer. I put a question mark. I'm like, it's great, but there's agentic AI now, so what are you going to do in that context? Or I want to be a medical doctor, and you're like, that's great. It would have been great 15 years ago if you had said that. We'll all have clapped hands. Now I've got a question mark. And so with all of those traditional careers, we now have to put a question mark and say, okay, what in that field do you enjoy, and what can it look like in this new world that's unfolding? And so some of the things that we need to be encouraging our high schoolers to do are things like exploring those emerging fields, expose them, take them around, get them to meet people, get them to engage in activities that will expose them to what these emerging technologies are doing in different sectors. Strengthening some of the core skills, and core skills are things that are transferable. So getting them to learn skills that they can transfer that are relevant. So communication, doesn't matter what field you're in, you need to be a good communicator. Adaptability, great one. You're living in a time of change, teaching that adaptability as a skill. Resilience, so you learn something and then after 2 months you get told an AI has taken it over. You need the resilience to not let life knock you down. Learning to learn. This is a big one that we're talking about in education right now. Rather than teaching people to just learn content, teaching them to learn, because they have to continue learning, even beyond the classroom. Teaching them to experiment early. And the thing with experiments is that they've got inbuilt failure. And so they're great for teaching resilience, they're great for teaching creative thinking, critical thinking. And then career awareness, not lock in. So not lock our children into, you have to be an accountant because you come from a family of accountants, or you have to be a doctor because this is what I know and understand. And then to understand technology's impact. So actually being aware that, okay, I want to be an architect, but if 3D printers come into the construction industry, how is that going to affect me as an architect? And then our second persona is the person who's in university. So you've already done your high school, you're in university, you're on a set course. What do you do to make sure that when you graduate with that degree, you remain relevant within your industry? And so here are some ideas. So you need to complement the degree that you're doing with some future-focused skills. And certifications are a great way of doing that. Certifications don't take you time, and they're skills-based. It tells your employer that, okay, so you know to do this particular thing. They're not theoretical. So those are a good thing to add to your college degree program. And then pursuing micro-credentials, so that's something similar. I'm on 5 minutes, I'm being shown the timer. Okay, seek work experience. This is something that I yearn for our Zimbabwean children. We are taking too long to expose them to the marketplace. They have to go out there and learn in the place that they're going to work. Because what the classroom and the textbook is very different to being in a workshop, or to being on a shop floor, or to being in an office. And so seeking that work experience so that they can get a sense of what it is and find their place in it quickly. Networking with purpose, we also need to teach them that. How do you network? How do you find out about the different people within your parents' network, so within your church network, and how do you leverage to learn from those people? And then staying informed. So when you're in university, yes, study, yes, have fun, but also stay informed about what is happening in the space that you want to enter as your profession. And the last thing is to have a career direction, but be flexible. So know the things that you're interested in, but allow yourself the flexibility to change if and when things change. And then for those of us who are already employed or are looking for employment, it's about upskilling, pivoting, and staying relevant. And on my LinkedIn, I've been talking a lot about the classroom or education needing to move out of the classroom and also into the workspace because of this. The fact that things have changed so much that even those who are in the workplace need to start re-looking at some of the things that they are doing and adopting new skills. And so what does this look like? Doing a current skills audit. What can you do right now? And how can you improve on it so that you stay relevant in the context of the technologies, the 10 technologies that I listed on the previous slide. Reskilling and upskilling strategically. So after you've done your skills audit, looking and saying, okay, so in my space, should I become the AI expert of accounts in Zimbabwe? That space is wide open. Step into it. Embrace digital tools. So the technologies, the 10 things that I listed, cannot be accessed without digital skills. That's the starting point. So get comfortable with the computer. Get comfortable navigating online. Get comfortable exploring digital tools. Monitor industry disruption. So make sure you're following the people that you know are doing things within your industry so that when they're talking about things, you're aware of them. You're not blindsided by the change when it finally happens. And then explore adjacent opportunities. I think I've got a slide coming up that will talk about that in my last 2 minutes. So I'm going to hop over to that and just talk about, so these two things. Gen Z, so the purple rectangle, that's from the University of Queensland, and they said Gen Zs can expect to have 16 to 17 jobs across 5 to 7 careers. So a job is, you start as a junior accountant, senior accountant, and then maybe you become partner. I don't know how that goes, but that is, you're in the same career, but you have different jobs within the career. A career means you're an accountant, and then you are a doctor. Okay, so when they say 5 to 7 careers, it means you're working in 5 to 7 completely different industries. And that's because of this environment of change. And then what I've highlighted in the yellow, it says that 65% of children entering primary school today, which was in 2016, will end up working completely new job types that don't exist. So in 2016, it means that child is now, what, 11, 10, 9? They're 9, yeah. So they're 9. And the jobs that they're going to be entering into, according to that report from 2016, likely don't exist. So what does this look like? In my 2 minutes? 1 minute. Okay, my 1 minute. What does this look like? This is now the story of me. So the field... So that's me, graduated as a doctor, worked in government, junior doctor, so I'm in the same field, became a senior government doctor, went into private practice. That whole trajectory took me 6 years. This is the next 7 years of my life. I was the design lead of my own business. I was running a design and print firm. So I was an entrepreneur in that space. I learned graphic design, became very proficient with that, worked in that for 7 years. And then this is the next 9 years of my career. I shifted, went into STEM education. I lecture at teacher training colleges. I'm an entrepreneur, businesses in education and in healthcare. And in the process, in the process, I have transferable skills. So I spoke about skilling children as opposed to giving them content. And those transferable skills have moved with me. There were things that I learned in medicine that I took with me into my first business. There are things that I learned in that first business that I've taken with me into the education space. There are things that I learned in medicine that I've taken with me into the education space. And I'm getting ready for another shift. So I am an example of the life that the Gen Zs are likely going to live. Moving from one career to the next, doing well in each of those careers, but adapting to the environment as it shifts. My adaptation was voluntary. I wanted to. Their adaptation may not be voluntary. It may be necessitated by the environment that they live in. But we can definitely support them through that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Priska. I'm sure there's quite a few insights from that. We will have a question and answer session where we can talk about all of this, as well as have some comments from our panelists from last time. So now I'm going to quickly transition to Professor Shvaba to tell us a little bit more about this world of careers and what is going on. I leave it to him. You can see he's already laughing. He's got a lot to say, so I'm handing it over to him.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I've been at the university for the last 36 years. I'm like part of the furniture, and more than 10,000 young people, I've influenced them one way or another. And I've been, maybe Paranoia University, I have spoken to them as a teacher and as a father. So for the men, you can go to sleep. You remember we spoke about this on Saturday, but I'll run through these things. Zimbabwe is very educated. Our literacy rate is very high. But what I want you to see is that thing on the Chiri Red. There's lots of poverty. And these are some of the graduates in O level. In 2024, we're 309,000. A level, 33,000. I double-checked that figure today. I think those are the ones that set, but 30,000 passed with at least 2 A levels. And those are our universities. 32,000 students are graduating from our 11 state universities. That excludes foreign-trained young people and private church, Catholic University, Africa University, Nezeg, and Solus University. Please note these things impact the future, impact career. So I'm not just giving you these statistics. I want you to think through it, because if we have lots of graduates, if we have lots of lawyers, vanogumsira vakutengesa airtime in town if there's no clear planning down the road. So that's our population. I'm giving you this statistic here, our population, so that you note kuti we end up, like right now, Harare is saturated with specialist doctors. There's lots of them, but the patient population is different. You go to other parts of the country, there is few, but because of the model which has been printed on us, kuti how are the patients going to pay? Someone is not thinking that they can actually pay using chickens and cows and whatnot. We are not thinking like that. Because being in children's ministry, it's important that I give you these statistics. That's the population of Zimbabwe. 46.9% is below 18 years old. But tiri educated, tine graduates obo, but I'm sure you have seen those pictures. We are importing a lot of stuff. People are going to import. I have some friends of mine sitting somewhere who I bumped to Dubai. In medicine, they import almost everything. If you go the spa, sorry, I don't know why this thing. Oh, Ndukundamberi. Sorry. I went to spa and I looked on the aisle. Most of what is there is being imported. We are importing all kinds of things. I was watching a documentary yesterday, France, Nema Bascoro. I was there in France last week, and I am telling you, Bascoro, they have different kinds. And I said, Zimbabwe. Now, we spent about 1.5 billion in 6 years importing my drugs. From that year, and you can see the other things we have been importing. Remember, these are educated people. We are someone's market. For those who know those cars, please note, Kuti, Land Rover, Toyota Cressida, Chichi, they created a market for us. The idea was should not make these things in Zimbabwe. They should be our market. And mchaona why. Now, pane audit yakaitwa ne I don't think we saved this, but I'll rush through this. Pane audit yakaitwa of skills in Zimbabwe by the Ministry of Higher and Tertiary Education. So look at those things. Engineering and technology, there's a skills gap of minus 93.7%. And all the others, arts, medicine is 95%, agriculture 88%, business, we have more than we need. So for my engineers, what that means is we keep importing technology. We import cars, we import bicycles, we import toothpicks, we import, but we do have, but we have them. But we are importing. So those are some of the skills gap. When they did the audit, they noted this thing you can download on the internet is readily available, or chiripopa internet. And then applied sciences, look at that. Those are the skills gap. The reason we are importing fertilizer, we are importing, this morning, my heart melted. One of our business team went to Macheke and they came back and say, Prof, taenda pa farm. These guys, in the next 2 months, they will make 3 million United States dollars. Vanima microbiologist, vanima plant technologist, vani chini in their space. They grow tobacco, they grow wheat, maize. So whatever that land is, it will turn around, but in the next few months, $3 million, because I can't produce 6,000 barrels of tobacco and things like that, although I'm not in tobacco. But we are producing graduates at the University of Zimbabwe, my microbiologist, my plant technologist, but somehow they are spending time around. Doc was talking earlier on about ICT. I asked one of our chairpersons, I need a technician, a computer technician, and he sends me a list and shows me about 20 young people. Vakagara kumba, vanema degree, they were at university for 4 years, ICT, Internet of Things, computer security and whatever, they are sitting at home. But that's the skills gap in humanities. Business, we have all we need. Agriculture, there is that skills gap. Okay? Look at that. Brothers and sisters, let me tell you, if you go online right now, the Chinese are patenting Zimbabwean tobacco. Probably 3 or 4 patents of Zimbabwean tobacco. There will come a time kuti mui grow tobacco yacho yoyo mune muchimbobhadhara some whatever to those guys. But we have learned people, very, very literate. In medicine, there is a skills gap really huge. There is a lot of requirements in medicine. It's just a big mess. Okay, for the men, you heard pastors speak on Saturday about the ratios that are required. But this is the problem. Arts and humanities, I think we are fine. Okay, we have lots of akunama skills akashota akawand. Annex in the same. Doc was talking about some of the jobs achava pana vakado lista ma jobs which have become obsolete, which are not necessary in that document. So if you are talking to your young people, vana muchivaudza kuti learn on this thing, kune zvisisiko, ndizvo ka? It's not there. It's not a future type of career to consider. Now, I mentioned to the men that there's a lot of politics, beloved. There's lots of people behind scenes who plan and think through these things. And I said that these people have destroyed us. They are good, but they have destroyed us. They've destroyed our industries and things like that because it's easier to get maize than it is for you to plant. And I told the men on Saturday that Ndruku France, there was this lady, and there is a 1 square meter land near the hotel. And we went there and we saw Papa Nekamuriwo, Chin. And I thought about my country. We have lots of land. We have land, but it's not Nekamuriwo. The education model, ichiripo, mostly for us, is that we were trained to become workers. Doc mentioned the work. We were not trained to become entrepreneurs. And that is still lingering. That's why when Wachita University are kunotsvaga basa. Mabasa acho maona manambers acho. Our industry cannot support that. So what are some of the parents doing? They're saying, mwanangu, enda unoita A-level, Cambridge, so that u go enda ku Harvard. And after Harvard, I met a parent in UK one time. I said, Uncle Jeff, my daughter just graduated $200,000 later. But akagara kwakuthatiri ku UK. So kana muchivaendesa ku UK mofungisa. Kuti couldn't we take that 200 momutengera mwana udzimba 5? Ndizvoka? My suggestion to you is ngaite undergraduate muno muZimbabwe. It prepares them well. I am telling you to navigate uko. It's but anyway. The government of Zimbabwe 2018, 2017, 2019 they decided kuti vanhu vari kudzidzisa sterek. We were teaching amadzangu. Even doctors machinchi ananchikudzao, we were teaching. But zvino zvachinja. If I walk into a lecture theater, the student can tell what prof vari kunyepa, because they can be googling you. So slowly my lecturers may not be called lecturers. They are going to be facilitators. Kungoti ndongo kuexamine. So there was teaching, and then there is research. We have been conducting research. I'm called Professor Chifamba. Professor, I have more than 120 publications in top journals. Chinyi chamaka producer chinobatika. With Honorable Minister Olivia Chen, I think. She came to university 2014. Kukanzi, kwandandiri ku Iran uko, awiti professor usina a product. But isu tengo in the publish or perish. We did community service, but the government of Zimbabwe introduced innovation and industrialization. The idea was we move our students to produce things. There was what is called a programmatic approach. We retired certain degree programs and we introduced new ones. Financial accounting, things like biomedical engineering, because we are importing medical equipment. The idea was, that young lady there is finishing a biomedical engineering, and in the 4 years, she has been coming up with something. She came up with a pediatric incubator, which some pediatricians were thrilled with. She has a renal dialysis because she was attached to some hospital, Kumutare, and she said, I was seeing patients coming kuuya for dialysis. So she decided, let me make a dialysis so that they can take it kumba. Shandisa solar, and glucometer. And tinobaya kana measure plasma glucose. So she came up with the kuti unongoisa ro kamumwe kako so, and then it measures plasma glucose concentration. So the young people can make these things. Somehow is always the problem. So kune zvakawanda, there are many other products which, particularly this one, these are young people who are turning lectureros, hyacinth. They are making those products, papers, vituru, and things like that. Geprir pakuti, trikutsvagawo ma-industrialists anogona kuvabatsira ma-startups avo so that they can move to the next level. Is that making sense? That lady, she's a PhD, she's finished, she came up with a armyworm resistant maize. So it's registered with Ministry of Agriculture. They've been mass producing it now. Kuti mchayonea per market. So it's armyworm resistant. So kana chibagwe chiri chocho achiti. Abandiwe ku ICT, they are making these Elon Musk driverless cars and things like that. So we have all these young people, they have things they can do. Uyu. Arikuita inonzi chinyi Fumvudza, ICT, kuti, to make it productive. So, and chakati konzera, let me finish maybe at this point. Kuti tive like this is COVID. The world closed its doors on us. After they had sorted their citizens, they thought about us. So we introduced degrees like vaccinology, kuti tigadzire ma-vaccines edu. But ndoda kuti mungoziva guys kuti war yacho future depends on our understanding of raw materials. Some of you have been listening to this Iran-Iraq war. I was listening beyond. I actually heard that kune mineral iri kushandiswa kugadzira izvozvo which Israel is using. That mineral kwanzi iri kubva kuChina. And I checked a little bit. I realized that we produce that mineral. Data is another area kurikuitwa hondo. Now, kana mchimanya mchidafamba 10,000 steps, someone is collecting your data. And one of these days, they are going to say Zimbabwe is sedentary. So pharmaceutical companies target your drugs there. So as we think about the future, about the careers, my models atati nawo hama dzangu askutipa the things we want. Right now kune discussion iri kuitika about business rural industrialization. Let me tell you, there is 2.something million people in Harare. Half of them should not be in Harare. We should be in the rural areas, setting up business units there. I'm telling you, whether it's chickens, it's what, tinao ma resources akawanda. But somehow, to them gates, now you can do solar in the rural area.
Thank you, Prof. I hope and pray that we've been challenged by listening to our two speakers tonight. Now, we're going to have a question and answer session, and I'm going to ask our panelists to come up and sit on the stage. And, the ones that we hear from last time will make a short comment each, maybe from what they've heard, and then obviously we can do some question and answer. So please, can you quickly come up? Our time is not great. The power cut did make us lose about 5 or so minutes, but it's okay. We manage. So if you weren't here last time, you may not remember some of the other speakers. So maybe when they speak for the first time, they'll just say, "This is me," and then we take it from there. Sounds good? Okay, so I'm going to allow our friends who spoke last time and shared their stories to begin by just making a short comment. It could be from what they heard today or just even as they've been reflecting from even last time. And then we'll take it from there. Okay, so let's start with you and we'll just go around. Short comment and then we'll move from there.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm Patience Shiri from last session. I am the Chartered Accountant in transition. Maybe who's already transitioned. I'm a Chartered Accountant who's already transitioned. I am running my own business now. And I would like to comment, just referring back to what the two profs, doctors said. Artificial intelligence, for me, even in my business right now, is such a big game changer. So I think everyone must really take these things seriously, because if we don't, we are going to be left behind. I was thinking that when I was working a full-time job, I never really had time to look at any of these things in enough detail. But now, because I'm in that space and I'm getting more time to really deep dive, and I'm realizing, oh my God, I'm so behind. I'm so behind in a lot of things. And I've since used some of these technologies to advance my business without even hiring people. Where I was supposed to be hiring more people, I'm using these technologies. So this is real. And so if we don't keep up or step up, we are really going to be left behind. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, good evening, everyone. My name is Pamela Marisa. So I agree with what the doc said, that you can change your career at any time. As I shared in last time that I transitioned, I was at the age of 40, I was a microbiologist, and now I'm a psychologist. So it's never too late to change your career. You're never too old. So don't allow anyone to tell you that it's too late. Or you're too old. It's never too late to change your career. Thank you.
Hi, good evening, everybody. I'm Humphrey Mliswa, entrepreneur and recently gone into farming. I think one of the things I liked, I phrased it differently when I spoke last time, but that the doc spoke about in your last slide when you're talking about there's things that you learned in your first career. And when I spoke last time, I spoke about life being like a computer game, and God positions you in a particular place because there's stuff that you must get and put in your little backpack. And as you go through life, you'll use that going forward. So I love the fact that you came through and reinforced that we're placed where we're placed for a reason. It's very deliberate with God, and we have to maximize what we get from that station, because it is linked to the next station and the next station and the next station, regardless of whether you're switching careers and all of that. It's very deliberate where God places us. Thank you.
Yeah, I think Humphrey plays a lot of video games. Over to you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tanaka Maracano. My industry is construction, so I have a slightly different perspective because other industries are afraid of emerging technologies, but for someone who does construction in this country, the building code in Zimbabwe is still, it was written in 1977 and hasn't been updated since. So even though we're trying to push towards these newer technologies and so forth, we're being held back by policies and so forth. So I do agree that people should be aware of the new technologies and so forth that are up and coming, and they should be ready for them in case if they do become implemented. But the fact is, we are in Zimbabwe. It takes us a while to accept new things. Look at how the fight went first, even just get Starlink and all these things. So yes, we should be aware of these things, but I don't think we should be overly afraid.
Interesting. It's good to have different perspectives. This excites me. Right. Questions from the audience? Or even comments, right? There are microphones, I think. There's one coming to you.
Hi. This is more of a comment. Just agreeing with what he just said is, I always say to my friends, I'm studying in South Africa, I always say to my friends, as my last resort, I'll just go back to Zim. If AI takes over everywhere, I'll just go back to Zim. Because Zimbabwe is so far behind the curve in relation to the rest of the world. When AI does something in America, it takes, let's say at best 5 years or 10, 15 years for it to then have its effect in Zim. So I think it's also important to have those sort of goggles on, that the time frame of things is very, like, our internet banking, like in South Africa, we say they can use their phones, Apple Pay and all that stuff. We still don't have it. We still deal with cash, and every other country will be using, online. So we're very much behind the curve on a lot of things. So it's also important to have that sort of perspective when you're looking at AI, that it's not hitting us at the same pace as it's hitting the rest of the world, I think. Yeah.
Interesting. I'll be keen to hear what the panelists themselves have to say. I'll allow 2 more comments, then I'll allow them to say something as well in response.
I have a question for Prof. So in my MBA class, we get lecturers who come with more than 15 degrees. We have one who had 29 degrees. And of the 29, he's pursuing 4 currently, and they are so unrelated, robotics. And he says, I'm doing space something. And they're supposed to come and challenge us. So my question is, based on what you said, that we need to change from being pure academics and start producing products and things that are tangible, who drives that? Who pushes that? If the custodians of education themselves, who are the lecturers, at 55, they are still pursuing more degrees on top of 29, then who's going to push for it? Whose responsibility is it? Are we supposed to lobby government to say, can you come up with policies that force people to start producing instead of just publishing? Is it someone who sits on education boards who puts forward resolutions like that? So my question is, we are well aware of this, yes, but where does the change start?
Okay. Really good question. 29 degrees. Wow. One more. Yes.
Thank you very much. Good evening to everyone. Thank you very much for the insightful presentations and also for the presentations we had the other week we were here. I'm also re-careering or multi-careering in learning a lot from the discussions happening here. But I wanted to understand, with AI coming on, for some of us who are above 40, above 50, how do we tap in? Are there specific courses or specific places where we can learn about these things? I know every time I go on Facebook, there's this adverts pop up, AI for the above 40s, AI for the above 50s. Do I know if they are the right things to switch on and maybe go to those websites and learn about AI? Or are they credible places where we can learn about AI? Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for those questions. We'll take another round just now. Prof, maybe you can begin and answer the 29.
Friends, mnakadaroga anondoda kunona psychiatrist. Let's be clear, what do you want to spend your time doing? The same thing is happening with what we are doing to our children. Kuma universities, they don't look at anything beyond 15 points. It's just a total waste of time. It's 15 points. Whether you have 60 points or what, they don't look at that. They just look at 15 points. So I don't know why we do that, but the policy, it's at the moment, it's higher education. My degree, we are no longer graduating young people who have seen a product, a good or service. That's where it is. But I can tell you the old lecturers, professors, ndo bachiri a problem. And I showed you a picture of the young person. They are ready to do things. They are walking into our offices, bachiti, Prof, I have this solution. If our training lecturer student is not solving Zimbabwean problems, your training is, look, you can have as much as you want. AI, I think Coursera is a good place to go because you can do your AI courses for free online.
You heard that, Coursera. And we will share that link. There's Coursera, there's Udemy. Those are good places to go. We'll share those on one of the groups so that you have them. later on. Okay?
Maybe just, I think the comment that was made by the young man and what you said about Zimbabwe being behind, and both of you are saying the same thing. I think it's important to take the mindset of that is the blessing of being in Zimbabwe, the fact that we are behind. Because, number one, there's less red tape required to break into particular industries. Anywhere in the first world, you'd have a lot of red tape. It would be heavily governed in order to meet the standard to break in would be high. So that being behind is, number one, the advantage. Number two, what you enjoy in that time lag is the time to perfect your skill with very little consequence for failure. Out there in the first world, it's very brutal. It's a very unforgiving world. So whenever you look at how backward we are here, always take it as a blessing. That time lag allows you to perfect your art. I remember when I was breaking into business and quite young, I had an Indian friend, and we were having a conversation the one time, and I remember him saying very distinctly, he says, Humphrey, you must build your business, build your life around 3 pillars. Have a business that's internationally recognized, which means have systems and processes that compare with the outside world. Second pillar, take your children to a good school. And number 3, have a very comfortable home, because at the end of the day, that's where you retreat into. So when you enter that gate and go into those 4 walls, that is your paradise, that is peace for you. So enjoy that time lag that we have, because the time will come when we're competing toe to toe with the first world, and they'll take us. They'll take us out because they've been doing it much longer. Thank you.
I just wanted to add to the comment about the lag, and it is very true that technology transfer into the African space in general, not just Zimbabwe, it takes time. But that realization is growing amongst the people who are supposed to be putting in the policies. So those conversations are happening. So the lag is still there, but don't expect it to be as it was before. And one of the things that I've personally been challenged as a believer is that when these things come up, am I supposed to be the advocate? Am I supposed to be the one pushing for that change? Am I supposed to be the voice, rather than just say, oh no, my country does not have the infrastructure, the framework, the policies? Am I the one? Has God opened this opportunity up for me to be the advocate, so that that space opens up and the infrastructure and the ecosystem that's needed for us not to be behind is actually developed? So that becomes another opportunity. And it's a massive opportunity for believers, because it means that we can go in with a godly voice to shape that space, rather than to have that space shaped by other people. And then we come in with our complaints about, oh, but it's not Christian enough. We should have considered this to make it more appropriate. So, and I agree that lag is wonderful, because it also gives us an opportunity to look at what has failed in other spaces. So when I'm now implementing in Zimbabwe 2 years later, I'm looking at how did the Americans do, and what were the things that didn't work for them, so that I learn from their mistakes and I'm starting at a level up. So it's not something that is bad all the time. There are opportunities within it that we should definitely step into.
So as we call in for another, okay, yeah, I'll let you speak, and then let's get ready for the next set of questions. So raise your hand so they can bring microphones to you already for the next set of questions. I see a hand here. Yes, Tanaka.
So when it comes to AI, I don't think AI is going to be a particularly big problem for Zimbabwe, because it's going to be something that's going to come in from outside. I don't foresee us being able to actually do anything AI related for a long time, at least until we fix our power problem. Because in the States, in order for you to actually just power a facility that can create these generative AIs, it's draining a crazy amount of power. They're building power stations just to power those facilities. And we don't even have enough to cover our basic needs. So for someone to come into Zimbabwe and build an AI plant, it's highly unlikely. Actually, we have a Zimbabwean who's building an AI plant, and he chose to build it next door. Strive Masiwa was building an AI factory in South Africa. And in terms of what's happening in terms of AI, right now, it's the big buzzword, but we've seen big buzzwords before. For example, when NFTs came out, like they were the biggest thing. People were saying invest in NFTs. People invested thousands of dollars. They lost all that money. And then the next big thing became crypto. Yes, there's some cryptocurrencies that are still stable, like Bitcoin is still doing well, but the vast majority of them have resulted in people losing a lot of money. So yes, I agree, we should keep our eyes on AI, but realistically, it's highly unlikely to change the average Zimbabwean's day-to-day. Like, we don't really have call centers, so those jobs are not going to be replaced by AI, because we just don't really have those facilities. And those are usually the first ones to go. Banking jobs, highly unlikely that the government is going to allow an American technology to take over our banking system. So I wouldn't be too afraid of the whole AI thing. I would keep an eye on it.
So as we head up to the next group of questions, I'm just going to make a short comment here. And I probably should be sitting up here because I spoke last time, but I decided to stay down here. And my comment is going to be this. I hope we really listened to what Prof said. Because sometimes some of the things that we're assuming are, the reason they are is because we're slow. It's actually not the reason. The reason they are the way they are is because the broader system wants them to remain that way, because our job is to be workers and not to think. There are things that we're still thinking are far behind, but we should be able to do something about it. We've got the knowledge to be able to create our own AIs, even if you say power is a problem. We've got the knowledge to be able to do some of these things ourselves. But instead of doing that, we are just waiting. That in itself is a problem. And it's one of those that we probably need to address sooner than later. But yeah.
There's a question here, but I just wanted to comment as well. I think regarding AI, Econet has like a very big data center in Zim at the moment. You wouldn't know it until you go to the offices. Then if you're doing corporate things, they'll take you for a tour. They have a very big data center. Frampo, also, which provides internet, also has a data center in Zimbabwe. And Frampo right now is actually developing custom AI agents for companies, local companies. So companies such as KW Blasting, Mohamed Musa, all these big companies actually are using AI specifically developed for them in such a way that if you go on AI things, you're using a public AI database, whereas these guys are building private databases, so all the information you look for in a corporate structure don't go out there. So there are people actually developing systems in place at the moment, and I'm part of local developers in Zimbabwe. There's a very big network of developers who are here right now, but they're not working in Zimbabwe. They're working in Zim, but working for clients out there. They're doing amazing things. So the skills are there. So they've armed their skills. They've gotten, I think you mentioned certification. They've gotten all these skills in terms of front-end developing, full-stack development, all these things that maybe people here don't want, but out there, they're so advanced. So the network is actually working.
Yeah. Good. Thank you. Let's have a couple more questions. Yes, ma'am. We'll start with you.
Good evening. Thank you so much. Thank you to our presenters. I think these are conversations we should also have had 20 odd years ago, but I suppose we learn every day, and it's stuff that we can get to implement. We have nieces and nephews that still need that as well for our children. For some of us, I think we're late, but it's okay. I think it's a learning process in everything, and we can expand on everything that we've learned. Maybe for me, it's policy change, especially for Zim, because judging from what Prophet said, the statistics that were shared, there is a lot of brain drain, where you find the key areas where we need the engineers, they're not here, because we have this thing that the child has to have attained 15 points to be able to do, these sciences and all that. So you find our universities, in a way, are letting us down because of that 15 points. You find when they go out there, The friend spent 20K, 200K just to, educate the child for them to be able to do the degree of choice that they wanted out there, because they don't mind whether they have the 5 points or whatever the case may be. So you find we tend to lose even those that are training as engineers or doctors or whatever the case may be because of certain policies that we have said. Because at a certain time, I believe, when one starts going to school, when you're going to Form 1, yes, the grade 7 results do matter. When you get to A-level, we don't look at that. We're looking at your O-level results. So I think they also need to change in those things so that at least we are able to retain the cream, we're able to have the innovators here stay behind and be able to grow our economy. Our kids are leaving. So naturally, at the end of the day, we'll be left with no one to be able to implement certain things. So policy change is very key for us. Then I think everything else will kind of, I suppose, be able to fall into place. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for
Hello, I'm sorry.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Sorry. Yes.
I'm sorry. Before we embrace anything, I think especially even as believers, I think we have to know where do these things start. AI actually yakambutanga sei ndiani akainitiate AI and what was his objective before we embrace, because this we are believers. Our ideas are not going to kuya. My crew are using AI everything.
I think we may laugh and say AI is now everywhere, but I think with everything we still need to make sure we know we have a foundation, and that foundation is Christ. So even if we're going to use AI, right? Because I mean, if we we might say who invented the vehicle and for what purpose, right? But I think whatever we use, we've got to make sure that we use it in a way that remains true to who we are, which is believers in Christ, first and foremost. That's important. All right, let's continue. Yes.
It's just a comment. I just want to help the young ones. You might have this comfort to think that Zimbabwe is slow and things, you can always come back and you have a sleeping nation to get to. EcoCash started, just the mobile money started in Africa when it was not even in the first world. Just to show you that, we are not that sleepy. Yeah. EcoCash is probably the most advanced payment system you can ever find in the world. It's just that we have policies that kind of want to suppress the advancement. So, my wife decided to make a career change. It was a decision she made. For me, I was forced out of a comfort zone. And when you are forced, guys, when you then think, no, I've got an MBA, 20 years banking experience and what have you, the banking that we did and what is there now is totally different. I can't even go back into the banking system. So, young man, Maricano, I know what you're saying, but just at the back of your head, remember that when some of the things that are changing today, we will not need a power station to power anything because it will be sitting in South Africa for argument's sake. And that's where things will be happening. And all will just be a market. So I think let's just understand that certain things are changing and it might not be the 15 years that it used to be. Some of these things could be 2-3 days. Yeah, and things have already shifted.
So I'm just going to allow 2 more comments. We do need to manage our time. It's almost 7:30. I know we lost a few minutes. I'll ask you to indulge me just for an extra 5 minutes to allow people to give closing remarks up there. But I'll allow for 2 more comments, and that will be the end. So I see 1 more hand. That will be the last comment there after yours, young man.
Yeah, thank you for your recognition, and thank you for the wonderful and well-thought-out presentations. I just had a question specifically for our professor. throughout your presentation, you're emphasizing the fact that we do have people in Zimbabwe who are able to make all these things and and advance technologies and make things that we import and spend millions of dollars on. My question was, I agree with what he said when he said that many of these things, we tend to be 10, 15 years behind that America would have thought about or produced way back. So let's say that, okay, we do have people who can produce these things now. Do we have the capacity and facilities for these people to globalize whatever they've invented or made? Like, do we have the capacity for Zimbabwean people who have produced something that can change the world globally and change a lot of systems? Do we have systems where we know we'll be recognized and taken seriously by most of these countries? As I understand that Zimbabwe, a lot of countries seem to sort of like undermine it and look at it in a sort of like shallow way. Thank you.
Last comment, and then we'll come to you. Yeah.
Okay, good evening. My question is to Uncle Jeff. So you said our education system is designed to create workers. And since 1980, I haven't seen, like, someone who is in education, our curriculum has not shifted. If you ask kids today, they still give you the same answers that we were giving maybe 20 years ago. What can we do to shift the mindset? Even if you see, we now have a new curriculum for secondary schools. It's still the same thing. It's rote learning. If you compare, like, maybe with Cambridge, it's a bit different. They try to ask a question that makes students think. But with our ZIMSEC, it's all rote learning. And how can we start, shift to start changing the mindsets of young people to think in terms of creators and not just workers?
Hard questions. So over to you.
The last question, there are changes that are taking place. On my way here, I actually phoned someone very high about why 5 O-levels? Why are we not using Shona to teach physics, to teach mathematics? She said to me, there are things happening, there are policies. So they are addressing some of those things. Concerning Yema 15 points, by University of Zimbabwe, Charter received 15 points only. Yema 15 points is a story of the past. So if you watch ZBC, we actually, our academic registry went throughout Zimbabwe, all the districts, and advertising to some of the kids who would otherwise never come to university. And Yakunzi, there's a way of doing it where they are saying, a kid Darikum Zarabani and 12 points is almost close to the kid Darim Harare private school and 15 points. So it's no longer about points. So our challenge is, let me give you an example. We can only admit Akusina medicine kuma universities in Zimbabwe at first year, one in the biomedical sciences, which is 3 years science training, then they go for clinical training, which is another 3 years. So biomedical sciences kuti vanhu vapinde NAST, MSU, ne GZU, all those now offer medical training. Numbers are a little different. But let me give you per UZ. We had more than 1,000 young people with 15 points wanting to do medicine through biomedical sciences, and we can only admit 200. So how then do you screen? So they got them to write a test. My psychologists. That's so we look at, that's the only way we can screen. South Africa runs into the same problem because the demand is big. My doctors, but when they do clinical training, you can't have more than 7 students on bedside. It can't be a rally per bedside. It's not possible. So, no challenge iripo kuti we have limitation on that. But nyama points is no manano munogona kudoona your kid ane 20 points and then onzwa mwana ane 12 points from the same school. Achita medicine, achita law, achita accounts, achita engineering. So it's no longer about points. I don't know what other universities are doing, but at University of Zimbabwe, we've removed the points. I can't remember the other question I was supposed to answer. Yeah?
The young man's question about capacity.
Tinayo capacity. Please, let's not worry about England. Let's focus on us. We want food. We want housing. We want to move from place A to B. We want good health. So, if you have young people who are innovating, Ndandre Paris Viva technology, there was lots of technology there. I mean, I was stunned. Then we had a young person who came up with an innovation 3 years ago, smart blind stick, which for people who are impaired, there is water, there's an obstacle and things like that. I saw that innovation there, which means our young people can do it. Talk about housing, what he was talking about. Chirukuti Varidzira is my standards Association of Zimbabwe. Vachiri kushandisa ma-standards okoko ndizvoka akari. Come to medicine control authority. Some of the standards, I was telling you about politics, those standards are meant that don't produce a drug. Here in Zimbabwe, you must keep importing there. But if you came to university, I'll show you there's about 20 young people who are doing drug discovery who have come up with startups yokugadzira drug blood pressure rechi because ari kuenda kumusha oudzwa nasekuru kuti mwanangu this thing lowers blood glucose ndizvoka but kuti ari manufactured rinde kustates. Why kustates? We have 42% of the adult population in Zimbabwe hypertensive. Why not treat our people first? So our problem is thinking about the West. Don't worry about the West. Let's build our houses here. Let's be in good health. Let's come up with solutions to do with food right here. So don't worry about them. So that is why teachers all lose my engineers, because they want to go to the West, and then you are a foreigner there. But if these young people with smart skills, or end up in rural area, or design a road here, local material. Let me tell you guys, those who drive along Blawayo Road, they are carrying some of the rare minerals that are going out. We will discover, like we did for diamond, the same thing is happening. So, our young people, guys, focus on solving Zimbabwean solutions. AI, power, and things like that, don't worry. We actually have minerals here. What you just need is to partner with a university, a research place where you can design. Right now, I was telling children say, to figure out photosynthesis. We don't know how plants make starch. We can do AI, we can go to the moon, but we don't know how plants make starch. We know carbon dioxide, but machine no gets. But for Christians, wow.
Right.
I'd just like to agree with Prof. I think one of the things that I've found in my work is that mindset is the thing that's holding us back more than anything else. And that is the thing that we need to work on strongly. We have people who have brilliant minds. We have well-educated people. They know a lot of theory. They're not very good at doing. And as a nation, we need to move to become a nation of doers. We need to see less obstacles and start seeing more opportunities. And that's really a function of our mindset. And the challenge, especially for believers, is to look at the nation from the eyes of God as opposed to the eyes of the metrics of what is coming through by reports and what someone else is doing in another country. God placed us here, and he gave us the environment that is perfect for the ingenuity that we need to bring to birth for the benefit of our people and for the benefit of the world. But we cannot engage in it if we're always looking at it as a disadvantage. It is not a crutch. We have the capacity. Prof is very right. There are things happening in places that we may not be privy to, but we can't wait for the policy to be rubber stamped and made into law and then given to me as steps to follow, and then I act. Do what you can now. If you have an idea, start working on it, because it's only as you work on it that you actually realize that, I thought I knew, but I actually don't. And you discover things that you are learning and perfecting. And by the time the policy comes and the opportunities and the ecosystem and the electricity and all of those other things that we feel are the disadvantage, by the time those things come, you're ready. Because if you wait for the power station to start learning about the things that you need to develop, you're going to need another 3-4 years, because it's not instant. Innovation doesn't go from an idea to a product overnight. It takes time. It takes time developing the product. It takes time developing you, the person. And if you don't start investing in that now, then the opportunity will miss you because you're just not ready. The infrastructure will come into place, the policies will come into place, but you will be left standing without, you'll have missed alignment. And so that's something that I really hope you take away from this, that don't wait for the environment to be perfect. Elon Musk didn't wait for the environment to be perfect. The Wright brothers invented an airplane in a bicycle shop. They didn't wait for someone to build an airplane, to build an airport, and to come up with aeronautical engineering. They developed it in their bicycle shop. So where you are, use the knowledge that you have, use the skills that you have, use these technologies, use AI to help you leapfrog and get access to the information, the tools, the skills, the thinking that we didn't have access to. For me, that's the power that I see. It's about having access to Silicon Valley mindset thinking whilst seated here in Harare and figuring out, how do I make that work for me and for my people in this place that God's called me to.
Yeah. You are giving your final comments, by the way, so they've had their chance to make their final comments. I'm just going to go around and allow you to make a comment as well. Whoever's ready. Humphrey, you look like you're ready.
Yeah, I was just going to say to the young guys as well is the one thing about life, and you look at, you talk about Silicon Valley and all these people, and especially to the young man who was asking about the opportunities, you always need somebody else's money when you're starting up, when you're young and you don't have your own money. So for young people, I think spend less time joling with the friends and the homies, and tag along with adults that you think will buy into your dream, because you will need somebody else's money. You especially in your early years, in the beginning, the first few steps, you'll need somebody's money, and you'll need kind money that will allow you to make mistakes and rise up again and move. I experienced it starting business. I experienced so much kindness. There was kind money around to help me along the way. So less time chilling with the homies, and more time tagging along and pestering adults and people that you believe will buy into the dream and unlock the financial value that you need. Because at some point, that dream is only as good as your ability to back it up with finance.
Thank you. Can I go?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, in the Bible there's a story about the talents, and it talks about two people, one given 5, the other one given 2, and then the third one was given 1. And it teaches us that the two who multiplied their talents, so they doubled their talents. And they were said to by the Lord, good and faithful servant. The one that had 1 talent didn't multiply it, came back with it to the master, and then it said lazy and wicked servant. And when he was asked, he says, I was afraid. And he goes on to explain why he was afraid to multiply. My closing remark is really that let's not be afraid. Whether you're young, you're an adult, you're over 50, you're over 60, let's not be afraid. Let's multiply the capacity given to us by God. Let's multiply the skills that we have. Let's multiply the resources we have. Let's grow. Let's double at a minimum. Let's grow. And because if you're afraid and you don't, you are wicked, according to the Bible.
Oof. Wicked. Right.
My key takeout from today's session is that the only constant thing in life is change. Change can be disruptive, it's uncomfortable, but let us learn to embrace change.
Great.
Right. So my closing remarks are, especially for the young people in the room, I actually liked what the young man was saying, that do we have the capacity to do these things and export to other countries? I do think we have that capability. We do have challenges and hurdles that we need to overcome in order for us to achieve them, but those obstacles, even on my last time I explained that, all the problems that Zimbabwe has are opportunities. So the power problem, that's a solar business waiting to happen, or for you to be able to make a dam and all these other things. So yes, we do have a lot of problems with our country, but you are the solution. The fact, things aren't going to change unless we are the ones who change them.
Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your contributions and your sharing tonight. I'm just going to say a couple of closing remarks and then we will pray and get out of here. So very quickly, I had a lunch meeting today with a colleague, and they've run a factory that employed almost 1,000 people. They are needing to retrench and reduce their factory to more like 200 people because the Chinese have brought in more efficient, faster technology that doesn't need people to produce the same product they do, and they cannot compete on cost anymore. Those are realities, right? And that's not the only one. Recently, we put in a bid to compete against someone for a project, and you know, they are a company that is much bigger than us, but they are bringing in skills from India at a fraction of the cost of our skills, so that they can be able to actually bid for lower prices than we can. It doesn't make sense anymore because their overheads are much bigger than ours. But because they're bringing in skills from India at a much lower cost than us, they're able to compete very differently. And when I see things like this happening, it pains my heart because, to be honest with you, we could fix this stuff, right? We could be doing very differently. It doesn't need people to come from China. It doesn't need people to come from India for us to be able to do the things we need to do in our own country and fix our own country. I believe everything begins with each of us saying, I'm raising my hand, God, use me as I'm supposed to be used, right? I'm here and I'm ready to be used. Too many of us, and I think Pastor Wes has said this before here, too many of us are fighting to remain in a place where we're not supposed to be, or to be doing the thing that we're not supposed to be doing just because everybody else is doing it. Let's be willing to actually say, you know what? I'm willing to stand up and do what I need to do where I'm supposed to be, because that's what God expects of me. And when we're in that space, I believe God will use us to do amazing things that nobody else can see or imagine. I met a young man recently who invented a computer for $65, right? And he's been fortunate that a bank has agreed to fund him to be able to make this little invention commercial. But he's been able to put a computer into a small little device. All you need is a monitor for $65. Imagine if we have a computer for $65, that can be in the hands of every single individual. Now we need somebody else to invent a power solution for that $65 computer. Maybe one of us should be that person. Thank you all so much. Just a little challenge there. Let's pray. God our Father, thank you so much for allowing us to be here tonight. Thank you, Lord, for these wonderful people who came to share their insights, their knowledge, and their ideas. Help each and every single one of us here, Lord, to be willing to live our lives the way you designed them to be able to fulfill the calling you've placed on our lives, Lord, to be willing to stand up and say, here I am. I'm willing to do whatever you want me to do, Lord. Lord, I thank you for our nation, Zimbabwe. I thank you for the resources that this nation has, the potential we have. I thank you for every individual who's here, who's been skilled and equipped by this nation. I pray, Lord, that we would use what you have given us as good stewards, that we would be profitable and faithful stewards, that we would not be wicked and unprofitable. I pray that you be with us as we go home, that you bless us and keep us until we meet again. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you all so much.